Welcome to Biotech Stage. It's a stage where we meet with the biotech professionals from the globe to discuss something very important, something interesting, and something very hot on the biotechnology aspects. Today's topic is very important as it deals with the regulatory guidelines, whether it is US FDA or EMA, especially for biosimilars or other MAPs. And in order to discuss with that, we have in our stage or with us Mr. Jake Knurek, and who is working at Mabion, which is one of the largest CDMO company in Europe. Welcome, Jake, on this show.
Hello, Arun. It's great to join you at Biotech Stage and share my thoughts on biotech.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. So, Jake, there are a lot of things which I wanted to discuss with you. The very first thing is that recently I understand there have been some changes in the regulatory guidelines when it comes to EMA, and especially for biosimilars. Some of the requirements for submission of the drug component. So, if you could please tell us something about those new changes.
Thank you, Arun. That's a really good question. So, what happened in 2025 was that the FDA has granted the first ever waiver of clinical efficacy study for monoclonal antibody biosimilars. That's Professor Sarafaz Niazi's biosimilar application for Stelara, ustekinumab, signaling a fundamental shift toward analytics-driven approval pathways. By early 2025, the FDA signaled openness to phase 3 waivers on the case-by-case basis. And indeed, the first such waivers have been granted in the US. For instance, Formicon was allowed to terminate planned phase 3 for pembrolizumab, Keytruda biosimilar, after FDA agreed it was not necessary given strong phase 1 and analytical data. And similarly, Sandoz announced it would minimize phase 3 for its Keytruda biosimilar following FDA advice. So the biosimilar product in the law that FDA needs to follow describes a biological product, describes a biological product as being a product that's highly similar to the product they are comparing themselves in that we call the reference product, and that
Mhm.
would have been the originator product. So it has to be highly similar, and there has to be no clinically meaningful differences between the two products.
Mhm.
So we, as a CDMO, as a Mabion, which support our biopharma partners, look at the structure of the products. We make that comparisons about the structure, how they are functioning. So that's the first step, to do that analytical comparison for the structural, functional, biological comparison, to make sure that their structure is the same. They look the same. It
Mhm.
has the same primary sequence, same type of glycosylation profile, no aggregates in
Mhm.
biosimilar. That helps it's in function. After that, we look more closely to whether or not there's clinically meaningful differences between the products, because those analytical comparisons can tell us so much about the molecule and so much about the comparison between the molecules and how similar they are.
Mhm.
And yeah, this is some residual uncertainty that would remain about how it performs in the body in the patient. So that's the phase 3 clinical trial. So we look for additional studies, including
Mhm.
what's called pharmacokinetics, pharmacodynamics, and immunogenicity. And that's the exposure of the drug in the body. Does it release in the body the same way as an originator? Does it circulate in the body the same way? Is it getting to the same place in the same way to exert its clinical effect? And
Mhm.
this all leads to the assessment that there's no clinically meaningful differences between the products. We already done it for the several companies for the years, but there is an expectation that when EMA or FDA approves the product, it will work in the same way in the body, whether patients take the reference product or they take the biosimilar.
Mhm.
There's no difference between the products. So
Mhm.
FDA not approve the biosimilar product if they don't feel that the data support or they are biosimilar, and ultimately that the products can be labeled for safe and effective use. So while the data packages between the biosimilar product and the reference product or an originator one are different, and that's where the concept of an abbreviated approval pathways come in. And we've
Mhm.
got the same situation in case of EMA streamlined guidelines for biosimilar developments.
Mhm.
In both regulations, that's a sign that the regulations key message is that when the biosimilar structural, functional, and pharmacokinetic profiles are virtually indistinguishable for the reference drug, additional phase 3 efficiency studies may not add any value. In other words, if no meaningful structural or bioactivity differences are detected in vitro, a costly efficiency trial is unlikely to reveal any difference except random noise. So, yeah, by eliminating an apparently unnecessary phase 3, biosimilars could reach the market faster without compromising quality. And
Mhm.
this is a huge benefit for both healthcare system, sooner access to affordable biologics, and the developers, because that's a significantly lower cost and risk. Now we approximately have 50 or 70 percent lower cost after that streamlined or short track biosimilars approval acceptations we've got.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's a big deal for the whole market, especially the biosimilars market, which we are support.
Yeah. So this is great to know. This is a significant milestone. I mean, if phase three efficacy studies are no longer required in certain cases,
Yeah,
depending upon their phase one and analytical studies, which show the comparability between the new molecule and the reference molecule, it will not only save the time, it will also save money because phase three takes significant amount of resources, both in terms of
exactly.
manpower and the money. So this is great to know. So one and this is going to be not just important for Europe or America. For example, if I'm talking about Indian companies, even if they are based in India, they are trying to, I mean, if they are trying to market their products in Europe and America, certainly it affects them. But even if they are not trying to do Europe or American market, they are trying to sell within India, whatever US FDA or EMA does, most of the time the Indian regulators tend to follow what US FDA is doing or EMA is doing. If
Exactly.
Yeah, so Indian government probably will also do the same thing. So that's a great to know, Jake. So that also tells me that doing the phase one and analytical studies are so important. The tests that you mentioned, the primary structure, secondary structure, tertiary, quaternary, all that determination of those structure is very important.
Yeah, indeed, it is really a lot of experience which give us that FDA and EMA guidelines give us also the three main points of conversation on the further conversation, because the
Mhm.
biosimilar developers today face significant challenges under the
Mhm.
traditional development paradigm. Bringing a biosimilar to market typically takes 7, maybe 8 years, at the cost often exceeding $200 million.
Mhm.
So, a major contributor is a large phase 3 confirmatory trial, which
Mhm.
can enroll hundreds of patients and last several years. These comparative efficiency trials are extremely costly, often
Mhm.
tens of millions of dollars. It depends, of course, of product of the final drug, but commonly representing up to approximately 15% of the developer's total budget for the drug development,
Mhm.
and also enlarging the time to market for the drugs. That really increases and change the biologics market and the industry
Mhm.
point of view for the regulation approaches, and also give us more possibilities for increasing partnerships and connections
Mhm.
level, because based on that, by relying on advanced analytical and PK, PDA, instead of redundant clinical trials, regulators are accelerating the piece of biosimilar innovations and patient access.
Mhm.
So EMA and FDA decisions remove one of the most costly and time-consuming barriers in the biosimilar development, making entry into the market more financially viable for both small and
Mhm.
mid-sized biotechnology companies. And I think that's the crucial point from our discussion about the topics for the Indian companies, because I feel that smaller biotech companies, once constrained by the high cost of a clinical efficiency study, now have greater opportunities to enter the biosimilar market and compete with established players. Of
Mhm.
course, CDMOs will become indispensable partners, offering the infrastructure and regulatory expertise required to seize the market opportunity effectively. I believe that that's a really great chance for starting global collaboration and partnerships in terms of that biosimilars pipeline, and that's a good time for go more regional. So every country should start the biosimilars pipeline because many of drugs IP has already closed the patent. So
Mhm.
EMA and FDA decisions that liberalize of the biosimilars market and will increase the chances of faster production and deliver the medicines for patients.
Yeah.
We see that many biosimilars approval and large status in US increasing from the last years, and the next years will be possibly also big chance to gain a market, because like you know and the market know, the first biosimilar gives the biggest revenue for the company, and then just the 10 or 20% of revenue lasts on the market, stays on the market, and the next, not contractor, but the next company can gain that amount. And in that field, in a biosimilar field, the competition is always good for patient, because there's so many diseases we still haven't got good answer, or the cost is too high for the many people. And yeah, that suffer now, in a quite future, it could be gone.
You touched on some of the very important points about not having the need for phase 3 clinical trials for certain biosimilars. Not only it will save time, as you mentioned, it takes about 8 years and $200 million, or I think you mentioned $200 million to develop one biosimilar. Even if it cuts down the 10%, even if it gives 10% savings, 15% savings, it's significant. And as you mentioned, in biosimilar, it is time. I mean, there are so many companies trying to market the biosimilars, and anybody who gets into the
Full
market
agree.
first gets highest, yeah, I guess, piece of the pie. And I mean, for patients also a significant savings on the final drug cost. So it is a big step. So Jake, I wanted to ask, you mentioned it started with Celera. So is this the, I mean, why did they choose Celera, or is this just happen to be that particular map that they decided to relax some certain requirements? So why Celera? Why not any other map?
That's quite hard question, but I think that's a good solution with science-based and streamlined development models that eliminate redundant clinical trials.
Okay.
So that that's a quick answer,
Uh-huh.
because at the background that there's a lot of scientific approval, scientific
Hmm.
arguments that that's proper situation to approve that one.
Okay. 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 Okay.
But yeah, there's not only one example. The evidence of the biosimilars market shift is already visible. For instance, Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, an emerging market company, recently launched its first biosimilar in the highly regulated UK market. So
Hmm.
I think about Versevo, bevacizumab, which was originally developed and approved in India.
Hmm.
So in 2024, they also managed to register in the EU a biosimilar rituximab. iTux ready,
Hmm.
if I remember correctly. This example shows that with the right capabilities, every companies can succeed globally in the biosimilar space, in even American or European market, with cost effectiveness, good end-to-end approach, and comprehensive portfolio of services, because that's not only important in manufacturing, but that's also important for process development, analytical methods, both development and in process, routine testing, and finished services, which is also several times outsourced to the different companies. If you got the one partner with a strict process, with a really good track record, you've got gold as a biotech company.
Okay. Okay. So Jake, also, since you work for Mabion, which is a CDMO company and a big CDMO company, India has obviously the big companies, as you mentioned, Biocon. I mean, Dr. Reddy's Lab and Biocon and companies like that. But at the same time, there are so many other companies also which are working on a much smaller scale, and they are always looking for right partner for development and further manufacturing. I wanted to ask you, what are the things that they need to consider, and what are the important points when they choose a right CDMO? If you could please say something on that.
That's a really good question. That's a lot of points which could impact the collaboration. Yeah, let's focus on the biosimilar place.
Mhm,
I could talk about Mabion's perspective because we are excited about this paradigm shift because it aligns with what we have long believed that
mhm,
the rigorous scientific approach can ensure biosimilar safety and efficiency more efficiently than the old routines. So the quality top. The
mhm,
quality should be on top of the whole biopharma processes. We as a Mabion have positioned our services to help customers bring out the best from the wave of change.
mhm,
Whether you are a small biotech aspiring to develop your first biosimilar or a seasoned generics company looking to expand your biologics portfolio, embracing a tailored clinical development approach could be the key to success.
mhm,
Lean development
mhm,
doesn't mean easy development. That's important. It
mhm,
requires excellence in CMC analytics, regulatory strategy as well, because different markets have different regulations. You know, FDA in US, in EMEA, EU, we've got EMA, and with Mabion's support as an experienced CDMO partner, you can confidentially reduce unnecessary steps and focus resources where they matter most. What I say behind it, we've got a comprehensive portfolio of different services. We could start with you from cell line development, going through the lab scale and then scale up the process to the clinical and commercial scale
mhm,
manufacturing. In that case, we are play a role in many modalities, the full biologic scope, like monoclonal antibodies,
mhm,
protein vaccines, antigens, as well as bispecifics and ADCs. So we cover a really huge part of the biologics market. Of course, biological biosimilars too. So I can say only please join us in a collaboration and be our guest and be our partner in that biologics market, because I truly believe that's the really good starting point for collaboration without the companies globally.
Thank you, Jake. One other thing that I wanted to find out is, we are talking about how the cost could be cut down with the help of new guidelines from FDA or EMA, or how you can collaborate with the CDMO. One other thing that is important when it comes to cost cutting is the latest use of the latest technology in the system. And when we talk about the latest technology, it is artificial intelligence, AI. So, do you see some use of, or how do you see, I should say, ask this, how do you see the AI is playing a role in the biosimilar world or biologics world?
Oh, that's a very complex question. I'm an AI optimist, but
Uh-huh.
not a prayer of AI. It's also something really, really important to know that AI is not an answer.
Mhm.
In my case, AI, of course, is revolutionizing antibodies engineering and biologics engineering by accelerating the discovery of new candidates for drugs, by optimize antibodies for drug-like properties, by also digital twins in the manufacturing or optimization our upstream or downstream bioprocessing with high quality assurance. Models can predict, for example, chromatographic performance,
Mhm.
optimize buffer conditions, and forecast impurity, reducing the number of costly experimental runs. When I talk about the digital twins for
Mhm.
downstream system, that's quite big chance, and also big challenge for our market ethics. I believe that we can use AI ethically and
Mhm.
we can create the proper infrastructure of that support for the different AI activities.
Okay.
That's that's quite introduction for the AI activations in the biologics market and also in biosimilars as well. But that's also many more AI smaller activities.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in my role in a business development department, we use AI for the research and new potential customers, for the new opportunities where we could support, where we could help, and what we can improve for the different companies. We use it in ethically ways.
Mm-hmm.
We don't use the really um, we don't use the data which we shouldn't use. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the private data. We
Yeah.
used only the public data generated with the companies, and I mean it as an ethic way for using AI. So, yeah, let's. That's a good answer for. I
Yeah.
hope that was a good answer for that question.
Jake, it was not a good answer. It was a great answer because I mean, I'm amazed. So many things you mentioned about AI that could do for biotechnology, especially the digital twins, to probably see how the protein will function on the different chromatographic columns and how much will be the impurity, and once you know all those things in advance or get some idea, I think you can plan your purification in a much better way, much more efficient way. You touched on some of the very very important points, and especially this thing I didn't know that. I mean, but even in the business development, AI could be used using
Yes.
the data that is publicly available, how to serve a customer in a better way. That, I mean, AI seems to be having like no boundaries. I mean, how it can help any industry, both in a technical terms and customer service or business development terms. This is really amazing. So AI is not going to go away. It is there. It is going to be there. Okay.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, we're still waiting from the market perspective for the regulatory guidance or using AI. That's also something which is interesting point of view because FDA and EMA just encouraging companies for using AI and watching.
Mm-hmm.
And first full AI drug, I mean, from the discovery point to the manufacturing or the clinical, is already done. So we are on that era.
Mm-hmm.
On this next decade will be the AI for drugs, AI for medicine, the crucial point, and we have to be ready for that. We have to be really stringent in the quality part, and
Mm-hmm.
we have to focus
Mm-hmm.
on the full landscape, not only the typical landscape, the typical drug, both innovative and biosimilars drug development and manufacturing, but also that powerhouse of AI drugs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe it's possible for approving the AI drugs in 2030, 2032.
Okay.
I believe that's the potential year of really AI revolution.
Yeah, 2032 AI based drugs. That's only like 7 8 years away.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, biologics have come a long way from. I mean, I think it was 1980s when insulin was made in. I think in obviously in bacterial cells. So in past 30 40 years, biologics have grown a lot, and so much of development, so many new antibodies, so many new monoclonal antibodies, and also cell and gene therapy. So, Jake, thank you. I mean, with this, I think we are coming towards the end. So, I want to thank you very much for your time and giving all the details on the new guidelines on EMA and FDA and the collaboration and your points on the AI. This will be very helpful for this our audience. Our audience is the Indian companies, Indian users in India. So thank you very much for your time and your assistance to understand biologics in a better way.
thank you. That's a big pleasure to join you, Aaron, and Biotech Stage. I really appreciate that opportunity for talking about that topics, and I'm really open for your feedbacks, your comments. If you want to ask me about anything, please use my email j.knurek at Mabion.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you.
Thank you as well.